Welcome to the Peter King Podcast, another busy podcast, and it's the middle of May. What is going on here? I'll be joined by my friend Paul Burmeister from NBC Sports in a moment, and also, this is going to be a different kind of podcast. We're going to have two conversations in this podcast instead of the customary one. I'll be joined by Los Angeles Chargers General Manager Tom Telesco, and then by the two people who are at the fore of making the NFL's annual schedule, Howard Katz and Mike North of the NFL scheduling department and the broadcast department, and you'll hear some of the inside stuff that happened on the making of the schedule. Paul, happy day to you. How are things with you, and how are things in the United States Football League?
USFL is great, Peter. It's hard to believe that this past weekend marked the halfway point of the season. I had a really fun booth. My normal partner, Mike Robinson, the former Seahawk and Niner, along with current Saints All-Pro D lineman Cam Jordan. He really made it. It's always fun, made it even more fun. And I have Cam for just a two-man booth this coming Saturday on NBC. So the games are great, but I'm really excited about what we're doing in the booth too.
Oh, that's good. Good. So we're going to get into 4 or 5 topics before we get into the conversations. We'll wade into Jaire Alexander rewriting the cornerback contract rules with a big deal that I think is really significant for the Packers and might be for the rest of the league. I wanted to talk to Paul, who, as most of you know, is a former Big Ten quarterback, about what the New England Patriots are going to be doing this year with Mac Jones in the absence of Josh McDaniels. We'll talk about the quarterback coaching plans for the Patriots. And we're going to get into a little bit of the kind of previewing the Chargers this year. I don't think any team has addressed more problems in the offseason than the Los Angeles Chargers have. We'll get into that with Tom Telesco. I'm going to tell you about a strange but true part of the NFL schedule, which is the 9:30 a.m. Eastern Time windows being strengthened by the NFL and what exactly it means going forward. And I've had a lot of reaction to my column this week in which I quote Jerry Jones as saying he will never, ever sell the team, and the franchise is worth more than $10 billion. So we got a lot of fodder for this week's podcast. But, Paul, let's start up north in Green Bay. And the only reason why my interest was really piqued in the Jaire Alexander contract with the Packers is that, first of all, he's one of the best young cornerbacks in football. At the age of 26, the Packers have given him basically a 4-year, $84 million deal, which, essentially, in my opinion, kind of rewrites the rules on teams signing really good young quarterbacks. I understand Jalen Ramsey was involved, but in some ways, he was a unicorn because he went to the Rams, and the Rams knew that, look, we've got to sign this guy to a big deal anyway. But before that, or since then, there really hasn't been anybody who's done the same thing. The reason I think it's a little different, Paul, is that, the Green Bay Packers didn't sign Davante Adams and chose to sign Jaire Alexander. So I'm not positive about the long-term impact of this, but I think short-term, Green Bay is sort of saying, hey, we think that Jaire Alexander has 4 very good top seasons left. And not only did Davante Adams probably want out, but we're really not sure if he's got 4 or 5 top years left. Give me a read of the situation.
I think those are two very good things to bring up. First of all, the age with the two players, and also the fact that we can't forget that Davante Adams at that point of his career probably wanted to be closer to home, and he got that wish came true. So those two things are very important. I look at this, Peter, and for as much as we think of the Packers quarterback first, and we've been doing this for the last 30 years with Brett Favre and now Aaron Rodgers, but we see Aaron Rodgers playing at an MVP level, and he's the first and second thing we think of when we consider the Green Bay Packers. The schedule just came out. Green Bay's featured because, not the defense, but because of Aaron Rodgers. But those building the Packers, those who are thinking, okay, how do we make this a Super Bowl team? They're doing so with defense in mind. And that's what this move says to me. Look at what they did in the draft this year. They had 2 first-round picks, both on defense. Last year, a corner in the first round. They're investing in Alexander this way. This is a team that is happy it has Aaron, but it's building through the defense. And this is just one more giant investment that lets us know that those making this come true, they're thinking D first.
I think you're right. I think that Brian Gutekunst, the general manager of the Packers, has basically shown himself to be a long-term thinker. And I think that in getting quality draft picks for Davante Adams, I think he believes now that both with his first-round picks kind of giving a backbone to the defense and Christian Watson in the second round, those are long-haul type players for him. So I think for all of us who've really questioned that he's not done enough at the receiver position, look, time will tell. Christian Watson is that guy, and there's going to be pressure on him from day one. So we'll see what happens. But I'm interested in the Green Bay Packers going forward. The Jaire Alexander contract only puts an exclamation point on that. Paul, this week we have learned that what we thought was going to happen and what we thought we knew is that Joe Judge, the former special teams coordinator of the Patriots, the former head coach of the New York Giants, is now going to be the quarterback coach, as well as other things, I'm sure, because Bill Belichick on the New England staff, believes in multiplicity of duties for his coaches. But Joe Judge is going to coach Mac Jones. Now, I'm not saying that that is absolutely totally wrong. What I am saying is that this is a crucial year for the development of the heir to Tom Brady. And he had an excellent first year under Josh McDaniels. And now I just question what in the world, I question how in the world is this the right decision for your young quarterback? And the reason I wanted to bring this up is I think you would have a really kind of unique, intelligent view on the importance of the guy who touches the quarterback every day for hours every day.
Peter, I'm going to look at this from a couple of different ways, so follow me here. The long view starts with, I asked the question of an outside linebacker for Tampa Bay at the USFL last week in a production meeting. His defensive coordinator is Pepper Johnson, longtime linebacker for the Giants, played for Bill Belichick, coached for Bill Belichick. I said, hey, that's an incredible resume of the guy teaching you. Give me one piece of knowledge you've learned from him. And he said, Pepper tells me as an outside linebacker, you got to know what the inside linebackers are doing. Then you got to know what the defensive tackles are doing. Know what the safeties are doing. Know what a corner is doing. Know the goal of every single call that I make from the sideline. So there's this view of everybody who has spent time around Bill Belichick that you need to diversify. You need to know everything going on around you. So him appointing Joe Judge, if that is indeed the case, to work with the quarterbacks makes sense. He wants everybody in his building to know everything going on around him besides just his one area of expertise. So in that way, it makes sense. The way that I would question it is there aren't that many people in the NFL coaching quarterbacks who really know how to coach technique. If a ball is sailing on a far comeback, what happened with the balance? What happened with the footwork? What's your release doing? What are your hips doing? And as you mentioned, a quarterback in his second year, maybe he needs a lot of that. He probably does. In the abstract, they all do. So where Joe Judge might be able to give unique perspective to the offense in the Bill Belichick way, and also reading the defense because he knows everything happening on the field, does he know how to correct and enhance what Mac is doing throwing the football? I would say probably not, in the way that most NFL quarterback coaches may not have that kind of expertise. So in a way, a win. In another way, if the second-year quarterback needs help on technique, is he going to get it from a guy who made a life coaching special teams?
That is so interesting when I hear you talk about technique things, because obviously Josh McDaniels was big into technique. And it reminds me of, a pitcher sometimes. If the pitcher, you hear major league pitchers sometimes, they get 2 or 3 bad starts in a row, and they went and corrected their mechanics. Maybe they moved to a different part of the pitching rubber. Maybe they felt that they were tipping pitches, whatever. But the reason why I think you make such a good point on that one is that I don't know that Joe Judge knows the mechanics of the position. He certainly isn't going to know them as well as Josh McDaniels knows them. Now, everybody who has been around Joe Judge says he's very anal in terms of his preparation and all that. He will understand everything that has to be done with the quarterback. But Paul, I think that if, as you say, if Mac Judge's ball starts sailing, or he doesn't do things exactly mechanically the way he is, he's maybe throwing behind the receivers or something like that, and something needs to be fixed, the really good question is, can Joe Judge fix that? That'll be a huge question with the Patriots going forward this year. I want to talk a little bit about the Los Angeles Chargers, because in my opinion, when I look at the Chargers this year, I don't think there's a team in the NFL that addressed more positions going back to February 1 than the Los Angeles Chargers did. So let's go through what they've done this offseason to try to make progress in a vastly improving AFC West. First of all, they re-signed Mike Williams, and they re-signed Mike Williams, the wide receiver, before the salaries started going crazy at wide receiver. So they got him basically at $20 for a franchise receiver, or very, very close to one. That's one. Number two, they drafted Zion Johnson and are going to probably have him be their opening day right guard. And I think he is the guy in the interior part of their line. That's a place that they really wanted to strengthen on that side of the line. They signed a little bit of an under-the-radar tight end in free agency, Gerald Everett. That position after the departure, or after several departures in the last few years at tight end, I think was a position they really wanted to address. And then on defense, obviously, they go and get Sebastian Joseph Day to sort of repair a run defense that really didn't do well late last season. Also, Austin Johnson from the New York Giants. But then, the two big moves, they trade for Khalil Mack, who they are pretty sure has 1 or 2 really big years left as a pass rusher. They think that he can help be an alternative to Joey Bosa on the other side of the field. And then, obviously, as well as Khalil Mack, they signed J.C. Jackson, the best cornerback in free agency this year. Paul, that is putting a lot of Band-Aids on places that need it. And to me, I look at the Chargers as a team that has really done a lot of good this offseason. How do you view it?
I think they are coming at this from position A, because they have one of the best 5 quarterbacks in the league. They have a tremendous young left tackle. So everything they do I don't know if I'm giving them an automatic pass to have it make sense, but they start from this position that so many teams would like to be in. Double-digit wins. Okay, they've done it. Tremendous quarterback and a left tackle. They have those things. So they are moving so much further in the right direction than so many of these other teams that are also applying Band-Aids and investing in this way. I think they're doing it from a position of strength as much as anybody. And as long as the schedule came out, this recently, I want to work that in. We find out right away. They play the Raiders and the Chiefs right away. So they're in this division that, yes, the teams are awesome. But you think about the quarterbacks, Wilson, Mahomes, Herbert, and Carr, they're going to get tested right away with that defense. And we're going to find out because it's really championship or bust with the Chargers. This isn't about winning 12 games. It's about how far can you go in January, maybe February. I can't wait to get that peak with those first couple AFC West games.
The really interesting thing to me when I looked at the Chargers' schedule is it isn't only sort of the way it starts, because as you said right away, this is going to be a really, really tough, and look, you've got 6 really tough division games, obviously, but I think what is so interesting about the schedule is that, Raiders in Kansas City right off the bat. And not only that, Paul, but Raiders and then fly halfway across the country for a short week Thursday game in what is always a really emotional game because they've played every game, between Mahomes and the Chargers basically has been really close and right down to the end. But then the schedule maker gives them a little bit of a break. The 2 easiest games on their schedule, Jacksonville and Houston, come in weeks 3 and 4. So that to me is a little bit of a help for the Chargers because look, as much as everybody can say, oh my God, if they start 0-2, their goose is cooked. Well, they could be 2-2 very easily if their season starts disastrously. Okay. But the other part of the schedule that I noticed is kind of a killer last month. Okay. Think of this for your last 4 games of the season. Tennessee at home, at Indianapolis, when you've got to figure that both Indianapolis and the Chargers are going to need that game, for their playoff hopes. And then the Rams in LA on New Year's Day and at Denver. So this is really going to be a tough thing down the stretch for the Chargers. And you know what, Paul? They better have a little bit of breathing room when it comes time to the end of the year.
Yeah, the Chargers to me are one of the most fun teams because how much I like watching Justin Herbert, how they've invested in that defense and what they do in that division. And I didn't get as far into the schedule as you did, Peter. I looked at the front end of it, but you bringing up what they have on the back end, it's a number of reasons that this is really a team of interest for all of us this coming year.
Paul, there's something about the schedule this year that I don't think. And look, I'm a schedule nerd, but I picked up on this and really nobody else has. And I talked to somebody in the league and they said I was right on. But there are 4 9:30 a.m. Eastern time games this year. Okay. And whereas many times in the past, we might see these 9:30 a.m. games and it was like, every year, Jacksonville is playing one. And, they seem to be usually with, bottom of the league teams or teams that you really don't think are going to be great that year. But let's just look at the 3 kind of home teams that we're going to see, or I shouldn't say home teams, but, the 3 teams, 3 NFC teams that are being given these 9:30 games this year. And I'll tell you what it says about what the NFL is doing. One of the teams, obviously, is the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. They will play the first game ever in Germany in November, and they will play the Seattle Seahawks. So obviously, Tom Brady will be playing a game in the 9:30 a.m. window. Second, Aaron Rodgers, October, London. He will be playing a 9:30 game against the New York Giants. And, you know, for everybody who kind of looks at these games as, you know, in some ways they're tentpole games for the NFL because they want to establish a real beachhead in Europe. They want to have big games in Europe. And then the last game, you know, I think both New Orleans and Minnesota could be playing in January and maybe deep into January. So to me, the NFL this year, as well as, you know, having a schedule like for Amazon on Thursday nights that everybody says, oh my God, great schedule, all that. But they have put 4 games at 9:30 that are good games. Well, 3 of the 4 games, the Jacksonville game, who knows? But 3 of the 4 games are high-quality games with top quarterbacks and or top teams. So to me, what you're seeing here, Paul, is you're seeing the NFL say, okay, you know, we're going to put games streaming this year, you know, on Amazon on Thursday night. That's a new and kind of revolutionary thing, which I don't think, by the way, is all that revolutionary because people are saying the same things about streaming that they said about the NFL going to cable TV, whatever, 25 years ago. And look, we get into this some other time, but the way I look at streaming and why I don't think it's a big risk at all is that I look at my 2 kids. They're in their 30s. One lives in the San Francisco area, one in Seattle. They haven't had cable TV in several years. They both do all streaming for their television. And, you know, whether it's YouTube TV or whatever, this is the way a lot of young people, and not necessarily young people, are looking at games. But the 9:30 a.m. window, I think, is another way for the NFL to say, listen, we're not just putting weak sister games on, you know, on that thing. We are trying to make people, instead of having maybe a 10-hour day watching games on TV, we want it to be 13 hours now or whatever it's going to be. I don't know. Give me your view.
Peter, it made me think of the longest, what I still remember is the longest 30 minutes of my life every Sunday in the fall when I was a kid, 11:30 a.m., waiting for those games to come on, watching like Face the Nation, Meet the Press when I was 8, 9, 10 years old. Felt like kickoff was never going to arrive. I would have given my entire allowance for football to have started a half hour earlier or an hour earlier, 2 hours earlier. And now, you know, we're moving toward that a little bit. And then as an adult, when I lived on the West Coast for a while, it was a little weird right away on Saturday and Sunday to have football on in the morning. But once you get used to it, you wonder, why doesn't this happen all the time everywhere? So I think it's genius. I think there's only going to be more, whatever the details are. But for those of us who love football, to have it on Sunday from noon till you go to bed, okay, we do that anyway. Why not have it on in the morning? I think the majority of us that consider ourselves huge fans would welcome it and love it.
Well, before we get to our conversations, I wanted to leave you with one last thing. This is not a one-year venture. This is not a one-year thing that the NFL is doing. Because next year, the home team for the game in Germany is going to be either Kansas City or New England. So, because the way that the NFL has decided to do this is that they are giving NFL franchises the right to do business deals, marketing deals, sponsorship deals in certain international countries. And there are 4 teams that have the option to do it in Germany. Tampa Bay is one, Kansas City is one, New England is one, and the fourth is the Carolina Panthers. The NFL is going to do these international games, alternating AFC, NFC as home teams, with the exception of Jacksonville. They have a separate deal. But this year, because NFC teams have 9 home games, it's easy to take the Green Bay Packers with one of their 9 home games to put that overseas. And so at the same time, they can say to their fans, you're going to have 8 home games this year, just like always. You're going to have 8 home games next year. They're not going to send teams without that extra home game to play a game in an international country. And what this means is that because the AFC will have 9 home games next year for all of its teams, next year in Germany, it'll either be Kansas City or New England hosting the game over there. So the NFL, with the 17-game schedule, part of it was, hey, look, now no one's going to argue. You got to stop arguing about, we don't want to go overseas. The Packers never wanted to go overseas. But now with the extra home game, once every 8 years, the Packers, just like this is an NFL rule now, once every 8 years, you're obligated, at least once every 8 years, to play a game outside the United States.
Hi, I'm Mike Tirico, and thanks for watching. Make sure to hit subscribe for the latest news and highlights from NBC Sports.